Today, we're going to be talking about something super important, and that is tables. Now, as boring as that sounds, this is a really important topic because everything that we're doing as product designers is usually optimizing for the highest ticket users inside of our products. And those users, even if you're working on a consumer level app, you're probably targeting the top tier inside of that consumer product. And that person is probably going to be looking at data. And this goes beyond visualizations and cool graphics and graphs. This is going into being able to make actionable tables that are valuable to use, easy to work with. I found this really great design that I used a while ago as a mood. And honestly, there is just so much juice in this one Behance case study that it's really worth looking into this. Like, look at all the little micro interactions when you hover on it, the row highlights. You've got really great, clear, defined data. But even more than that, you've got sections within that data. And I think that's such an important thing that goes unnoticed inside of tables a lot, is being able to group things together. So like, this conversion or something, I don't know what this exactly means, but you just know that these are grouped together and this is a set of data as well. Similar sets, but you've somehow pieced them together. Further down, we're talking about tags and grouping and drop downs and filters. All of this is super important stuff that you need to map out when you're creating data tables that are dynamic for the user. But one of the best ways, and this is like a lot of complex UX that I'm looking at here, and because of that, I don't know if this is the right choice. But one product that I love, and this is not like a brand deal or anything like that, I just love working inside of this product for all of my stuff. I play my content out on this. I run all of my roadmaps that I'm working on my products with, and just general stuff like forms and things like that. I also work a lot inside of this. And this is Airtable. So what's awesome about Airtable is at the end of the day, it's like an Excel sheet, right? It's just a bunch of data tables. But the cool thing is you can make these different. So this is a date. This is a single drop down or multi-select. So I can select multiple things here. I can create statuses, which is single select. I can also, duplicate this and say, don't duplicate the cells. I can change this to some other drop down. And then in here, I can switch this from like a status base to yes or no. Or better yet, instead of a yes or no drop down, I could just I could switch this to a checkbox. And I can change the style of that checkbox. And I can make it where, each of these are all different. As you can see, as I'm hovering, we've got the rows highlighting. When I click, it's very clear which things I'm clicking. But what's really cool about this is groupings. So you can group things specifically by whose field it's in right now. It's whether it's in dev or design. I can also group this by sprint. So when inside of development, I could see which things are going to be broken out and developed at the same time, so we can make sure we get design ready in time. It's just so flexible to work with, and that's why I really love working on Airtable, because it's so dynamic and all this stuff. So what I want to do in this video is I want to go take some of the vibes from this side, from this Behance side, and also the dynamicness inside of the Airtable, and we're going to go create a table inside of Figma. Now, really quick, let me just sidebar on this, because Figma is actually really difficult to work with inside of tables. Why? Well, because how do you do it inside of an auto layout, right? You want to make it where each row is a thing, but then what happens if you add a new column? Well, every single row, you've got to go duplicate one item inside of that row. Now, if you decided to go the other way, where you grouped it by column, well, the trouble is every time you add a new row, you have to go in and select each an element from each column and duplicate that, right? So there's really no good way to work with tables inside of Figma, but I'm going to kind of show you my best bet, because I actually designed a really advanced admin panel with a table that had a lot of dynamicness, similar to Airtable in it, and I went back and forth. I tried it on columns, I tried it on rows, and I ended up kind of coming up with a combination of both. But really, rows is the thing. So let's just dig into it. Okay, so let's just say that we've got like a little sidebar. Maybe that's like 160 pixels wide. Or no, let's do 200. Okay. We'll put a little shadow on it. Perfect. Cool. Beautiful. We've already got a nice designed thing. So we got a logo here. You know, honestly, we could probably skip a lot of this stuff and just jump right into the side where we're getting into the actual table side. So hold on. We've got our stuff over here. Now it's time to dig into the actual table portion of it. So I like to start by putting a frame that's going to be kind of like the entire wrapper inside of this. So we've got it at 200 pixels because, you know, over here, this bar is 200 pixels wide. So we've got it set to 200 pixels. I'm going to put this size perfectly to the edge. So we've got a flush. We could probably even auto layout this, put it to fixed 1440, and then yeah, this frame can be. So what I want to start doing here, just to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, is, you know, we are trying to set this up so that it's really fluid. And when we've got it inside this container, well, we want to test responsiveness sometimes, even though we're designing primarily for a laptop size, which should cover large desktops and down. We still want to like kind of like test it every once in a while to make sure that we've got the juice running right, so that we can kind of grab it. Like, so if we've got, let's say that we've got this table and it's flush, right? Like, let's say that this is our table. Well, we want to pull this in every once in a while to see just how much those columns are getting tightened and how to work with those inside of that. Okay, so cool. We've got our bar. Now let's head back to Airtable and check this out. So we've got this big column here where we can filter for things. We can check to see if like if the owner is dev, then we could make this just a dev only board. Then we can group it by sprint so we can see what stuff is ready for dev and is already in the sprint. So, right, because this is where it kind of becomes more of a dynamic table, right? We can collapse just to dev, just to see just the design. But then we've got up here, we could see it here. And if these were numbers, like a project tracking or something like that, we could set these to have like averages or empty, what percentage is filled, all that stuff. And so we've got another bar right here that can bring a lot of data that's specifically contextualized just to design. But then also down here, it's still shown for the total grouping, right? So that's really important, I think. So I want to make a grouped table just like this. So let's just start, and I'm going to just basically recreate this bar first off, okay? So let's head back to Figma. I'm going to, above this, I'm going to move this inside, and maybe we don't have padding on this. That way we can make this our frame, right, up top, well, our menu frame, right? And maybe we copy the box there. Okay, and then now this will become an auto layout itself. This will get some padding so that way we can make sure to shore that all up. So we got nice padding, we got a menu bar up top, and then this is going to be our data table right here. So inside of here, I'm going to add a grouped by. This feels a little too heavy. Maybe we go, I like semi-bold, and then probably go down to 16 pixels. Okay. Grouped by. I'm gonna pull up feather icons. Let's make a grouping folder. Oh yeah, perfect. Put a folder in here. Throw an auto layout on that. Then we're gonna center that. And here we go. Okay. This is probably too big, so I'm going to bump this down to 16 pixels. Bump the width up to 2. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay. So Airtable, if you remember, it's got like this little boxes around it. So I'm going to put that spacing in. So I'm going to fit that spacing in there. probably, let's start with 8, 8, just to see how that feels. Yeah, that feels really good. Okay, maybe we go up, bump this to 12. Yeah, that feels awesome. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit so that way I can size this down. Yeah, I think that will make this 170 just to give us the most amount of room over on our table. Now, okay, so we got grouped by, let's see, person. We'll just call it person for now. So I'm gonna probably underline that and bold it. And then we can call this, let's just go sorted by date. Perfect. That feels good for a sort. Ah. All right, bring that down to 2. Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to start giving these some color. So I'm going to probably go with like a green or a blue for this. Airtable has this nice, like, it's almost brutalist, but it's more like, I don't know, functional brutalist is how I would describe it. It's like very utilitarian, but it's not meant to be designed, you know what I mean? But in that, it comes to a brutalist vibe. So bring this down here. So, okay, so we got grouped by person, sorted by date. Maybe we just make one that's like off, you know? And we'll just put this here, call this filter. Yeah, so you can add a filter if you want, is the idea for that. And can I just say that I hate this filter icon? Like, it makes sense why it's a thing, but like, it's just like so hard to work with because it feels very off-center right now. On both ways. It feels off-center here and then wide too, but I'll just, I digress. I'll leave it there. That it's just not my favorite icon, but I think I would usually typically use this icon for a sort or for a filter, but I've already used that and I didn't find a good sort, so we're going with that. Okay, so we've got grouped by person, sorted by date. Okay. So with that in mind, we need to make 2 groups, right? So now we're getting into the actual table. So we've got the need for 2 groups. So let's just start working with that. So we've already got this layout down here for a body of the table. Let's just make sure that it's like super easy to read and find. 40 is probably too much. Maybe we go 32 or 24. Yeah, 24 feels pretty good, which actually makes sense because 24 is right here. So maybe actually this goes to 32. This goes to 24 because the zoom levels, right? Every level of spacing that you go in, we want to bump it down or up a notch, right? So we've got 32 pixels here, right, on the top and bottom, but then within that, right, since these are 2 of the same, they're 2 groups, right? So they're contextually similar, but 2 different distinctions between that context, which means that the group or the gap between them should be less than 32. It shouldn't match 32. Otherwise, it starts to feel a little bit of a weird grid, right? But bumping it down to 24, or maybe we even go down to 20, it makes it where you could just really tell without having any more information inside of that those are 2 items of the same grid, right? So now let's make those items have items, right? So we've got to set, going back to Airtable, we've got to set a top bar, or maybe we make that a bottom bar, I don't know. There's a plus button here as well down at the bottom row. So tapping anywhere down here will open up a new row. And then we need to make settings so that when something is grouped or sorted, we've got these highlighted automatically. That way we know just looking here in this grouping area rather than up on the top bar, we don't need to always be thinking that this is grouped or sorted we can just look at that color and know that it's getting affected by the start date somehow. And then we can go up here and connect that orange to orange, and we're ready to go. So I'm actually going to do update this instead of that blue. I'm going to make it orange. That way we can reuse that same cadence inside of Airtable. Okay, so let's just let's get going. So I'm going to make this a top bar. We'll call this person. We'll call it Nolan Perkins because I am the person who's making this tutorial. So I'm going to wrap that in an auto layout. I'm going to hold Alt while double clicking, and now we've got that set to a fill. I'm going to add some margin here or padding in here. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to put a fill on this and probably make this a little bit darker. There we go. Perfect. Sweet. Okay, so that's a good header for now. We do need to make a collapsed icon. We'll call this our chevron, I think it's called. Yeah, chevron. There we go. So this means that it's currently collapsed. So let's just turn this 90 degrees. Okay. So now it's no longer collapsed. It is shown. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to grab both of them, press Shift A to make an auto layout. And then now we've got the first beginnings of our data. So I'm going to put a white fill on this. That way, like, we're getting into the data table actually now. And up here on the actual like grouping here, I'm going to put a border radius on that, and maybe even put a border itself. Yeah, let's just start with a border, and we could tighten that up as we go. But I really think that this is feeling much better. Yeah, perfect. Oh, that looks so good. Cool, cool, cool. I do think also each row needs its own border. Maybe we put it as just a bottom border. No, maybe just a top. Yeah, that way we can drop the border from here. Put it just there. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So yeah, let's start with that. Now we've got to sort out our column structure, right? So in here, once we group it, it becomes different, right? So without the grouping, we've got a fixed table header right here. Up top, it's fixed to that nav up top. We don't need any padding. But once we put a group on it, the UX pattern becomes a little bit different, right? We have to, we can still have it fixed up here, but each of these are its own grouping, right? So we have to sort out how we do the table headers. We could put a table header right here, or inside of this data table right here, or we can put it up here. And let's just start it up here, just to make it easier on us. I'm going to put this like this, drop the drop shadow. Maybe we make this the same color as that. Actually, let's just copy the entire styles of that. Perfect. I'm gonna also copy the drop shadow here. I think we need a border too. Bottom. So right now I'm just using color shades. Definitely think that it's worth doing this when you're first starting out, right? I'm just making a color palette on the fly right now. I'm not trying to make a I'm not like, I didn't come in with a plan on my color palette. So because of that, I sort of have to make this as I go. And the best way to do that when you don't have a set color palette, like border is this hex code or whatever, when you don't have that, it's best to just use layerings of dark and white. That way you can, you don't have to sit there and think, wait, this is perfectly color accessible or not. No, okay, let me tighten this up a little bit. Like, we can go tighten that up just a little bit later, that way we're just like, we're moving and we stay focused on building our layout right now, not focused on styles too much. Having said that, I did just spend a few minutes making the style, so it's always a thing. It's a balance as designers, and I'm sure you know it already. Like, see, even here, like, because this is layered on top of a gray, it's getting a different color than this. So maybe it is time to set some colors. I think it is. Let's do it. So I'm gonna pull the trigger and do that. So I'm gonna color pick that. So that's C7. So okay. So all of our borders will now get a C7. 100 pixels. Perfect. Okay. Okay, and then this outside one, let's see, should that be a C7 as well? C7, 100 pixels. Yeah, that looks really great. Okay, cool. Just cleaned it up. So everything's C7'd, and the contrast is feeling really great too. Okay, so inside of here, we're gonna set our table headers, right? So first off, we need to create kind of a gap because we've got a gap here, right? So we need to create that, kind of like fake that through a really great way to do that is through a toggle, right? So we could have this one, and I think that's a really great idea to be able to reference the numbers like that. So let's go ahead and do that and make that transition. So right beneath this guy right here, this 24, so it's the same sizing right here. So I'm going to paste this inside of this box, and we're going to call this 1. Probably put it at 12 pixels. Fade it out just a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to put the same exact padding right here. So that's 32 pixels. I'm going to do it right here too, 32 pixels. And then now we're working within the same set. So then we got another 12 pixels. So I'm going to put another auto layout in here with the Shift A. I'm going to hold Alt and double click. So now we're grouped, like the table header is the same size as the group of data, which is important, right? So now we've got that. And I'm going to start naming some of this stuff too. So I'm going to call this data. And then this is filter bar. Okay. This is table header. Data content. Group 1. Group header. Data item. Row. Let's just call this row. Cool. Okay, then up here we've got table header, and then we can call this container, I guess. And then inside of that container, we got to start working with the same within the same realms of everything. So we've got 12 pixels more of margin. I keep calling it margin. It's padding, padding. So I'm gonna put another frame that is set to 24 pixels. So now we've got this perfectly set up where our bar or our little dot, right? We can do a select all right here, right? You could do that here, but you could also press right here and do select all. And so perfect. So I'm just gonna like make a little toggle box. C7 it. Maybe that's a C5, a little darker. Put it in the back so I can delete this this one. Okay, we're moving. This is a little small though. Maybe we put 12 pixels on that. Yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay, so we've got our table header, the beginnings of our table header. Now with columns, we want to have some distinction. You see these little lines right here? It's very soft and subtle, but those lines need to be shown across this whole table so that way we can really easily read one cell versus the one next to it, right? So because of that, we need to make our gaps here, we need to make them 0. So I'm going to go ahead and update that over here. And that's really something that you want to constantly be doing is every time you make a change to a table header, you have to make it to the group header and then the data row as well. And vice versa. If you make a change to the row, you got to make it up here and up here. And that's one of the frustrating things about table design is it's just so hard to work with from a workflow perspective. But it's just something that is unavoidable. I spent many days trying to figure out how to do a better process than I have, and I still haven't figured it out. So if you figure it out, just let me know, and maybe you should be the one teaching this stuff, not me. So I put that in a container right here instead of a frame, sorry. And you could make this an auto layout. And you may want to. The difficulty is that we really don't want to set these columns yet until we have the content filled in. Because let's look at this content right here, right? We've got this name, right? Well, how big should the name be? Should it be this or this or this or this, right? Over here, the owner or the person's name, should it, like, it really is dependent, like the width of the column is purely dependent on the content of the column, right? And so because of that, we really need to start filling in data a little bit before we can really determine what our table header is going to be. But we've set up our foundation where we have 0 pixel gap on each of the columns, which is really important. And so now it's just on us to go ahead and make sure that we've got the table working properly, right? So we can, I'm going to actually bump this to 8 pixels. See, this is actually disconnected from the table header, so we can make this, kind of be however we want, right? But I'm just going to leave it at that, where it is tight at 0 pixels, but then there's a gap right here on the column itself, which is the Nolan Perkins line. And then now we're going to be getting into data. So I think that for our thing, we don't need a column saying Nolan anymore, right? We could have that shown, but since it's grouped by that person, it's kind of irrelevant information because it's already grouped right here, right? And that's going to be a fixed header on that group header as well. So let's get into the content. I think that let's just say that, let's put a date on it. Let's do, May 3rd, 2024. And we're also going to size down our content. Our content should be probably about 13 pixels. Sometimes we may need to get down to 12 to fit more things in it. I'm going to leave the group header at a 16 pixel font though, and maybe we even bold that just to make sure that it really stands out from everything else. And okay, so let's get into it. So worst case on a validated data field, it's probably going to be 12/30. 2024. So that's probably the most that we'll see from a date field, about 75 pixels wide. Let's just bump this to 80, and yeah, that's perfect. So we got a data field of 80 right there. Now it's time to get into another one. Let's go with let's do a tag, right? Let's say that this is like outstanding. Maybe this is like a it is like an invoicing kind of system. I'm going to put that in a auto layout. Bump this to 8 by 8. Fill it with like a green. Like a red. Yeah, there you go. It's always good, especially in these levels, to go down to a vertical trim on the text. That way it's not messing up the auto layout grid too much. Additionally, I'm going to probably bump these rows down to like 4. 4 feels a little tight. Let's go with 6. Yeah, that feels good. Okay. So we've got a tag now. Outstanding is a long tag as well, but we may add some tags later that make that even more needed of a size. Let's go with status. So right here, let's pull up some of the data points that are over here. But yeah, cost. Let's go with 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Yeah, perfect. Maybe these are thousands though. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Cool. Okay. So that's another one. And always like have a fixed width on these because we're going to have to set the columns to a fixed width later. So try to stress test these numbers as much as you can. Like, what does 99,000 look like? Will there ever be 100 into the hundreds of thousands? Maybe. If there is, make sure that you really stress test this because look, even as I'm adding these numbers, it's like it's breaking the field. So that's why like if every column is the same width, or every piece of data has the same width of content, but then it's dynamic within that width, then that's where you win on the design level, and you've made sure to stress test it as you go. Let's go with clicks. Let's just put another data point of like a simple data point. So that one's probably going to be let's go with like 50. Because we've also got a table header. So whatever this is, even though this may only be a few digits, we still got to name what these digits are. So usually that title is probably going to take at least 60 pixels. So we'll just leave it there at 60 for now. We're going to go clean all this up later in just a minute. Maybe we make this like a toggle switch now. So let's just make a toggle switch really quick. Okay. Right, make a little circle inside of it. That's 0. Perfect. So that thing is on, whatever it is. It's an on switch. And then, yeah, we've got some other options to do some action buttons, I think. Maybe we just add some more data points. Maybe we have like 4 data points as well. We'll figure out what those data points are in a minute. And probably we need to have a name for these, right? So maybe this is like a customer or something like that. So this is a really long customer name. Perfect. Okay, so we're at 240. Maybe we just bump that to 250 just to make sure that it's like really extended, Okay, we've got the bill date, whether it's due or not. Yeah, pretty great stuff. I think the only thing left to do is to add some action buttons. So, we've got a few options. We could do some like data point conversion kind of stuff, which may be really cool. Let's just do that just to make something that looks really cool. So let's put the frame to 100. So I'm gonna wrap that in a frame. Then I'm going to auto layout that, set it to a side, and then probably do like a 4 pixel gap. This is going to be filled. Cool. And we're going to just color these. So, red. Let's just go colors of the rainbow here. Red, green, blue. Okay. I'm going to break a few of these apart. Okay, cool. That looks good. Bing. I don't know what that entails, but we're right here it entails next conversion. So I'm just going to leave it at that, saying that when you hover, it's going to be a thing that shows. We'll go make that too. We'll go design that as well. Okay, perfect. So that feels like a good amount of data. So let's just dig into it. So we've got our data points now, and now we want to wrap each of these into another container that is going to allow the table to flex outwards, right? So I'm going to put this auto layout, auto layout, auto layout, auto layout, auto layout. Ah! Auto layout, auto layout, tab, auto layout, tab, auto layout. Oh, no. We've got to group that, then auto layout, then another auto layout. Okay, cool. Ooh, forgot to auto layout this guy. All right. So now we can just like simply add like little spacing here, and it's going to scale everything out. But what we really want to do is we want to make everything except this one. So I'm going to unclick that. Everything is going to be set to filled container. But so what that's going to do is it's going to scale out all these data points to fill the space, right? But we need to go back to the world where we've got this sized to a specific width. We also want to set this one to, and this one. The ones that are like really going to be a hard thing to budge on the sizing, we want to put those at a size. Like, so this is always going to be a date, so it's always going to be about this size of date, right? Same with this, where it's probably, it could be more dynamic than what we've got, but it could be up to, $99,000, right? So because of that, we need that to be a fixed width as well. And then everything else can be pretty flexible. But then this one too, this one can be pretty small because it's never going to be bigger than this. So maybe we just add a little bit of spacing here, put it at 40. And same here. This one could probably be flexible. No, let's not flex it. So what we just did was we essentially just undid that fill. where all of these are the ones that are dynamic though. So as we shrink this width, it's going to shrink down just those data points right there, which is awesome, right? It makes it where we've already stress tested this content, and now we know that everything's going to fit still pretty good down to, wow, all the way down to 1150, which that's a great break point for a data table as dense as this. Another way, and a thing that Airtable actually does is they actually don't even worry about screen size, and it just goes out the side of the window. Now, you know, obviously we always have the room to do that, but try to avoid that, especially on a large admin panel for a consumer product or anything like that. I mean, or sorry, a large enterprise tool. Not everybody's going to have a side-scrolling mouse, right? And also too, any data that's out the side is probably not going to be viewed much, or at least it's not going to be nearly as important as all this stuff here. So if you're trying to make actionable items, then putting them putting stuff, anything over here is going to make everything a little bit more messy. And actually, speaking of actionable items, we need a way to get to a settings or a manage thing. So I'm going to duplicate this guy. I'm going to put a 3-dot menu inside of there. Was that kebab? More, maybe? Yeah, there you go. Cool. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna ungroup this and just put it there. Okay, cool. So the only trouble though is we're pretty tight on a lot of this stuff, right? Already the data's pretty tight. So what do we do? Well, first off, I think one thing that we could do is all of this is semi-bold. So maybe we make this regular. That instantly increases or decreases some of the needed size, right? Like look at this 99.99. We could probably shrink this down by at least 5 pixels now. So let's go do that really quick. I'm gonna grab both of these. Instead of 85, let's put it to 80. Perfect. This is good. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that works pretty good right now. One trouble though that we have is it's really big. These guys are really big right here. And so it's when all of this stuff is so bunched up and we've got these flexed out, then that's where we come into some trouble. So what we do is instead of doing a fixed width, we do a min width. So press this drop down and press add min width 80. And then again, we'll do add min width 100. Min width 80. Min width 260. Now I'm going to set all of these to be filled. Boom. Gives a lot more room to breathe already. I'm going to put this min width at 40. And this one could probably flex down a lot, actually. And then since this one and this is both fixed, then we are good. And yeah, so then now, besides everything on these edges, we can now set all of these to fill. And just like that, we've got a lot of room. And it's dynamic. All this stuff is much more dynamic now. And it's still fitting down to, 1100. Oh, look, this one's not set right. Whew, that's getting tight. So we need to add a min on that. Let's add a min of 50 on this. Maybe 90. Yeah, 90 feels better. Okay. So cool. We've got this working now down pretty good, right? Trouble is this feels really awkwardly placed with it being so tight right here. So maybe we actually set this to a filled. I'm going to set the constraints there. Put those to a filled. Put a min width of 30. Okay, that's feeling pretty good now. Yes. Wow, look at that. Again, it's still fitting all the way down to really only breaking at 1140. We could even, depending on how much data this gets filled, but these feel pretty great. The real trouble now is we've got to fit these into headers, right? We got to make sure that the headers are good as well. But having this be a flexible data column like that will, you know, scale up and down, that's a really great. It looks really great. So what I just realized is we haven't added our side borders, which is very important. So I'm going to put a height fill on these, and then I'm gonna drop this down by 6. So now everything will have a solid height, the same height as all of the other cells. And then we're gonna put a stroke. We'll put it at just a right stroke, and we'll go with that C7 from before. And now all of the cells are blocked off as cells. But the trouble is we've got some issues. So these here are all at the top, which is definitely not ideal. Actually, same with these. So let's just get there. I'm gonna press center on that. See, and this is the trouble with data tables, is once you make duplicates like this, everything becomes much harder to manage, which is why we want to turn these into components as soon as we can. But we're still working out all the pieces. So making components too early is going to be more detrimental than otherwise used. So I'm going to put some padding on just this one, because this is actually the biggest one, right? So I'm going to put this to like 6 on there, and that looks really great. Maybe too much even. Maybe put that to 4. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. We'll put, this needs a little bit of padding right here. And this is really big. So I'm going to put actually a max width on this. I put a min width on it. I should have put a max of like 50, maybe even 40. 5. There you go. And yeah, I'll also, while I'm here, do a few things. So I'm gonna remove the border from this so that it's flush to the edge. And then, speaking of flush to the edge, let's set our right margin or right padding to 0 as well. Just gives it even more room, which is really important. As we are going to scale this up, it's going to get even more and more busy over here. And so we just need to make sure we're connecting it all. I'm going to center that. Looking really great. Okay, perfect. I think the one last thing that I want to do is I feel like there needs to be a little bit more padding on all of these, specifically these guys here, like all the text labels. So I'm just kind of holding all of these, and yeah, there's really no great way to do this either. Like you see, there's no way to like select all of it without selecting everything. But I don't want to mess with these guys. So yeah, this is the difficulty of working with tables. But I think we need to bump this to at least, yeah, 8 feels a lot smoother there, which is really great. You know, I'm looking at this again too, and I think that this needs a max as well. So maxing it, maybe 70. Yeah, because whatever this is, it's going to need a good table or header explaining what that is. Okay, now we've got our table, and it's looking really great. We've set our mins and maxes. Yeah, I mean, it flexes really, really far down. So I'll delete these two here. So now we've got different groupings set up inside of that. So I think now is a good time to create our components out of these boxes. That way, that it's just going to make everything so much easier. So I'm going to just grab a row, duplicate it out here. I'm going to ungroup this. And so now we've got all of these individual items set up. Let's just like auto layout it so that we're like all spacing them out, you know. Okay, so we got more conversion status. Let's just call this follow-ups. You know, emails. I don't know. Calls. What are things that matter to these people, right? We'll call this data. Maybe quote, tag, date, client. Perfect. Okay, so now we got all those. I'm going to grab them all and press this little caret to the side, and I'm going to press create multiple components. Let's call this number, item number. Perfect. Okay, cool. So we now have the ability to piece all that together, and so that way when we make changes later, it's going to be so much easier to work with. So I've got an empty row, pasting it in. Perfect. All right. We've got multiple rows now. So now if I decide that, hey, this one needs to be bolded, well, when I make that bold change, it automatically bolded it right here, right? You know how components work. You get the gist. But it's really valuable when we're working with tables like this, especially when we're kind of getting into stuff like this, where we're changing the sizing of everything. And it makes it where as we are expanding and contracting our tables and rows and columns and all that, it becomes more and more important to do this. I'm realizing I don't like this border right here, so I'm going to drop that border. Very nice. Maybe put this at 0. Yeah. Wait, no. We need to have it set to 24 because it needs to be the same size as this chevron and the toggle. So never mind. Forget I said it. Forget about it. Forget about it. Okay, this is feeling awesome. I think that about does it for the data itself. So let's get into the table header. Okay, so we'll go with client name, right? And we're going to do basically the same thing. But each of these are going to be an auto layout on their own. So I'll pretty much like copy this auto layout styles, paste them here. We'll set a fixed width. What's this width? 260. So we'll set this to 260. And actually, in fact, it might actually be better to copy into this. We paste all of these, break them from components, and then set them all the same width as this. So I'm going to bring this to 0. Maybe we make all of these instead of that. Maybe we make these be hug to contents. Yep. All right. Perfect. And I'm just going to go in and make sure, though, that we've got the same width. Yeah, everything's good on the fix. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to delete the actual content that's inside and I'm going to rename it, right? So... oh, shoot. I pasted all of that inside of the frame. So I'm going to cut that, bring it out to the container level. There we go. That looks better. Now we're matched up perfectly. So we'll call this, what's his name? Date. Okay. I'm going to paste, instead of this tag, I'm going to paste the text inside and we're going to call it tag for status. Yeah, there we go. Going to call this quote data tab calls tab emails tab follow-ups. And as long as this is set up the proper way, does this have the mins? Oh, we lost all of our min and max width when we went in and changed that. Yeah, shoot. Okay. So the components are lost the min and the max stuff. So we're going to have to re-put that in. So these are going to be set down here. Yeah, shoot. Okay. I'm going to grab like all of these like that. Okay. I'm going to set these to fill. There was no mins and maxes on those. These had a min max though. fill. Oh, okay. We've got the mins and maxes still. Perfect. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Thank God. All right. I thought I was going to have to go re-up a bunch of stuff in there. So, yeah, perfect. I think the only thing that was missing was these here. Oh, yeah, and all of these are... yeah, okay. Everything just needs to be set to fill. That's the trouble. I'm going to unselect those. Unselect those. We're going to set all those to fill. Perfect. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Cool. So we've got date, status, one U in quote, calls, emails, follow-ups. Maybe we call these alerts. All right. Call this track conversion. Yep. Gonna delete that guy. Well, maybe we just delete the visual of it because it still needs to fill the space, you know. I'm gonna set this back to 0. And then if you remember, I just added on the biggest row, I added in here some margin or padding. I think that we should put 8, yeah. And then drop this, set all these heights to fill. That way they are gonna have the border flush to the edge. There we go. So that looks really good. So we got our conversions, we got alerts, all that's looking awesome. You know what? We should drop the border from this edge. And then we'll drop the border from this edge too. And now that feels a bit more clean without having a random cell right here. You see like that cell is just kind of sitting there. It's kind of weird. So that cell could go to the end of the earth, right, is the idea. Let's make sure that all these margins, paddings, gosh, I keep calling them margins today. I don't know what's going on, but these are all padding inside of this. We want to make sure that those are cleaned up and even with everything, which was 8 pixels down here. So that's perfect. We're back at it. We're going to set those to left, center. I don't know. Wouldn't let me do left, center. There you go. Cool. Okay. We've got our data table set up. We've got a table header set up. And now we just need to duplicate these down. And it looks really awesome. If we pull this up into a, maybe we set this to fix 750. Perfect. So we got a table. Now let's get it scrolling, right? So we'll set this to a fill. We'll set this to a fill as well. So then now as we scale this out, the content, the inner contents are going to scale out. And then we're going to be able to have these as fixed headers by just making this. You see how this is set here now to fill to the space minus these headers. So we're going to switch to prototype. We're going to do overflow vertical scroll. And just like that, we've got it pretty solid. The only trouble is we got to clip the contents as well. So there you go. We've got our data table set up, and we can see that everything is lined up really great inside of here. You can see that it's like scrolling. We can see all of that. So I think this looks really awesome, and I think that's really the workflow of how to work with a table inside of Figma, but also too just like building a table out in a design is you've got to start with the content itself. You got to scale those out and try to find some fixed widths on those columns. So that way, let's say that we now added a new data column. Well, all these other datas need to be smaller as well to be able to fit that, right? And so every time you add that, you've got to really set up your grid like this. So that way, as you add more, they're going to scale out and everything else is going to flex properly. Yo, so after filming this video, I got a comment from Peter Pastor asking for some advice around tables on mobile. So let's go ahead and make this table into a mobile version, because yeah, there's a lot of tactics that I like to do. There's a few ways that you can do this, right? And it really all comes down to the amount of content that you have. So here we've got this grouped section, right? It's grouped by Nolan, and then inside of those we've got all of these rows, right? We've also got all these data points. Now there's a few things that we can do. So now as we scale this out, it should hopefully be scaling and it's matching up. Perfect. Okay, so now that we're here though, when it's set to fill, these kind of start scaling out. But, you know, honestly, it follows pretty good all the way down to 1200 pixels, which is pretty solid. But a few big breakpoints that we need to cover is 1024. That's for tablets. And then we also need to get into 900, which is vertical tablets. And then, obviously, mobile is... I like to design mobile at 375, but you might even need to support down to 325. So obviously there's a lot of movement that we got to do inside of this. But so I'm gonna bring this back to 1440 to keep this as like a nice little reference. We'll drag this down and get started. So one of the big ones that we want to do is make this a scalable or collapsible sidebar, right? Big one is we could just delete it and assume that we're going to put a little section right here that would pop that open, right? Maybe we open up plugin feather icons really quick. We'll open up a hamburger. Boom. Okay, drop that in over here. Boom. Okay, perfect. So now we've got this. Maybe it's like faded out a little bit too. Yeah. Put that in on auto layout. Add a little bit more padding here between. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So now if you press this, it would you know kind of bump out and show the sidebar on top. And what that means is that we can get this looking pretty solidly down to, okay, yeah, so that got us an extra about 100 pixels of stuff, right? We could also scale this down, bring it to 24, but still, we're sitting here and we're kind of like talking semantics. We're getting extra pixels here and there, but it's not actually like ideal once we get down to this smaller screens, right? Like this is starting to get harder to read. These as well might start breaking and getting overlapped. And so, yeah, so you need to start asking yourself, okay, what actually needs to be shown when we're down this small, right? Does this conversion column need to show? In previous apps that I've worked on, I've actually hidden stuff or turned it into a smaller icon that when pressing it would, you know, same deal where here is it would pop out that sidebar and give you all the information about the whole thing, including the conversion rates, right? So I think that's one big one that we would probably want to cut, right? And then the other side too is, do we even need to keep this as a table, right? There's a lot of data in here, but we could potentially turn this into a card, right? So let me go show you what that could look like. So we've got this table set up here. Now we've got all these set up as components, but I'm going to go ahead and break them for now, just because, like, you know, we're really kind of going back to the drawing board when we're getting to mobile, right? Yeah, so let's go ahead. I would say that this, instead of a fill, we'll set that to a hug. We'll set this to a hug as well. And maybe actually we'll just ungroup this entirely because, yeah, when we're ungrouping it, then we can get to this side as well, so that it's kind of, these two will sit in an auto layout and we'll have them kind of sitting next to each other, right? Maybe this gets a little bit more on the visual hierarchy just to give more bump, because now it's like really tied together. We're no longer having those divisions in our cards anymore. We probably want to keep this one here, but again, I'll probably bump that into this auto layout and allow for, you know, one, this really long customer name, the date that you know, that they started, right? We could also choose to put the tag here, and for now, let's just do that. I'm going to probably move that around, but yeah. So now we're working more card-like, and I'll probably bump this into a grid that goes like this. I'm going to add a little bit of padding to it. 32. Maybe this gets 24 across as well. Yeah. Instead of fix, we'll go hug. Wait. Oh, yeah. Boom. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so this is looking okay. This is definitely like losing a lot of information, right? So I'll probably even pull this date out, or maybe even maybe the outstanding and these two go down to their own row, right? So bump that down. This looks pretty good too, actually. I think I'm just gonna move this down so that way we get like even more like we got control instead of the grid. So okay, so we've got this one now, and it's sitting in the top corner, which is cool. I think that looks great. We've got the date and outstanding. We could potentially move this outstanding and put it in an absolute positioning, put it up in the top right, you know? So that way, as we're scaling this down, it's kind of moving around, and we know that we'll have that gap right here too. So, you know, that's another option that we could do. I think if we're going to do that, though, instead of using absolute positioning, we should probably move this to the top, and then we could actually put this in a row together up top that sits like this. Move it into auto layout, put it to fill container, and then double click over here, and now we've got this justified positioning. And yeah, okay, 16 pixels, tighten up the padding a little bit, and yeah, so this is filled, so it's scaling down as we're going, it's scaling. Put that to fill, put that to fill, and now we're sitting here with this card that's going to like really scale out all the way, right? And I think having this outstanding tag right there really feels good, right? Like you want to be thinking about what's outstanding and not, and I think that the fact that it's standing out is really good. So we've got the date, we've got the name, we've got that. Now we just need to put these data points, and this is where the card becomes difficult, is all these data points, these numbers, we need to have the labels with them, right? Data, calls, emails, follow up. So we do need to have that involved somehow. So we also have the quote as well, and maybe we can actually move the quote up here, right? Because we've got the date that it was quoted and the actual quote itself, the number. I don't think we really need to contextually when we're reading this is the only number on all the data points, which means that we should know roughly that is a quote number, right? The dollar amount of that quote. So I think we can comfortably put that in there. And now we're sitting here. You know what? I'll actually probably bump this into this row up here as well. Maybe put these into an auto layout. Put it to hug. Maybe do 8 pixels. This is looking okay, but you know, maybe we just drop it actually altogether, knowing that, you know, anywhere you click on here, it'll be there. Yeah, I think let's do that. That's feeling pretty good. And so now I'm ready to actually label these, right? Because we're just working with data points now at this point. So what I like to do is put it like this. So this will be data, right? And put it at a bold, right? We'll put this at 0, 0. Put this at 8. Make it hug on the tightness there. And yeah, okay. And I'll remove the stroke. Cool. So now we've got data. What was the other ones? Calls, emails. Emails. Follow-ups. Perfect. Okay. But I don't like the spacing on it, right? We need to set some hierarchy visually. So I'm going to put that in an auto layout. Bring this down to 16 pixels. Maybe even 8. Yeah, that feels better. So this is 16, this is 8, but in between those two, that's 24. It should be 24. There we go. Okay, so we've now got this, but this is really hard to read, right? So what we need to do is set this to a fixed width based on the biggest one. So that's 70. Let's put all these to 70. And now we're bumping up against each other. We could bring back out a little bit of padding just to make it more easy to read. And yeah, there you go. So we can now put it at a fill, set these so that way they're all filled. Justify the contents. There we go. So that's one option, right? We can now go like this. I think too, what would be great is putting this into like its own little container box, right? So maybe that's like a C5. Yeah, that's probably a little bit too much. Let's EA, perfect. Again, this is pretty low style, right? You know, we're moving quick here. I'm trying to just like kind of explain my process when I'm building tables responsively right now. So yeah, now that we've got this container though, I think we want to bump this down to maybe 16 pixels. Yeah, this is looking great. So this looks cool. Now we've got this this little like toggle. I think what we're gonna do is move that toggle up to here. We do need to, if we're gonna do that, we need to give it a little like label on what those things are. Additionally, we could just choose to move all of this into the inside panel as well on mobile, especially. Like we're just trying to get information out, right? We're not trying to like really be cute with this or interactive, right? If you want interaction, jump into the more details panel, right? So honestly, I think this might be the best bet right here, right? Probably gonna put a little stroke on this. Cool. Okay, and then now what we can do, we can drop that. We can drop this table header as well. We can move this up, and I'll just yeah, I'll put this fix. I'll move this down. Maybe we go 375 or yeah, 325 minus 32 and minus 32, because there's gonna be 32 pixels of spacing on all sides of it, right? And so that's a good thing, because we can now set this as a grid. Auto layout it. We can set this as a grid that upon scaling all the way down to mobile view, we now have cards, right? And so at this point, I would say, you know, this guy gets down to about 1200 pixels, right? Dropping the sidebar brings it to another you know, 1100 pixels, let's say, right? But even then, probably 1200 is probably the last breakpoint you need to stress about before jumping right to 1024. And so I think at 1024, we're looking at a gallery section like this. And then that gallery works all the way down to mobile perfectly, as long as you're setting that card up for scale, right? Because maybe at 1024 it's this wide, but then at 900 it's this, and then 325 it's this, right? So like, because though we set that auto layout so clean, it's really working on all of the responsive side. Okay, so that's option A, and I think that's probably the best option. But it's also the option that's going to be harder to build, harder to maintain, because you're going to be adding more data points down the line. And maybe we're looking at a column that has way more fields than this, right? And so one thing that I've done, and actually let me go pull up the file really quick. This was a app that I designed a while ago, and essentially what this does is it's like a table that has a lot of options for Airbnb. So the guests can check in, and you'll be able to see their IDs. Look at that. That's a nice little guy sitting there sending his ID picture in. And yeah, the managers of those Airbnbs will be able to see this. So you'll be able to see when somebody hasn't checked in. You'll be able to see when they have. But then you could also report damage and all that, right? So that's the general idea of this app. And we kind of did a similar thing where as you scaled out the page, it got to a certain point. And this one actually, because it had so little fields, it made it down to about 1,000. So 1024, we didn't really need to make any changes except dropping this. So that was really easy to do. And then on mobile is where it got funky. So we started by trying a card system, but then we got into the same issues where we were adding more and more content in this. We were adding more lines, and it just became hard to manage. And I realized over time, like, this is still in flux. Things are going to be changing all the time. And so what we ended up doing instead was building out something like this, where you could scroll through, right? And this is what they do on Airtable, actually, on mobile. As you pull up your phone, you scroll through, and this also, it makes it attainable for large desktops with large data sets, is you really don't change anything as a developer, right? All you're changing is spacing on each breakpoint. Yeah, it's still the same. It's just smaller images, and the spacing in between each is a little bit smaller, but it allows for us to be able to scroll through, and it scales all the way out to all of the designs that we need, and we could still search inside of that design as well. So that is really my other option that I would suggest. Is the option A is make a gallery grid, and then option B would be to literally just like cut it, right? Make it so that I'll wrap this in a frame, clip it. So like literally just do this, right? So as you're scaling out, as you're adding more data, you can just scroll all the way out. The big thing is this, right? Do you have a side scroll? That lowers accessibility a bit. But again, if we're just talking about mobile, then that's fine, because there's always going to be a side scroll on swipes, right? So those are the kind of the things that you got to consider when you're designing for tables on mobile. Is, can you make it a gallery grid? But stipulation is there going to be a lot of content getting dropped or added in the future? If things are in flux, it's going to be harder to design. It's going to be harder to maintain on development. And therefore, keeping the same environment where it's the same exact layout, it's just different breakpoints, sizing, that makes it a lot easier to work with when you're doing stuff like that. And it makes your developers a lot happier. So yeah, hope you got something out of this. And it's going to be a lot of work that you're doing as a designer. Is mostly all we're doing is admin panel stuff, right? We're not doing the sexy, fun stuff unless you're designing your own apps like I am. So yeah, hope you have an awesome day, and thanks. See you on the next one.